It was June 1944. An unbearable heat suffocated Hungarian Jewish families as they boarded the trains. The officers barked curt commands to bring only the essentials. People obeyed, clutching small suitcases filled with family photos, jewelry hidden in clothing linings, a few coins. The Nazis promised they would be resettled, that they would have work, food, and a place to start over. Many believed. They needed something to believe in. Fear wore many faces, but at that moment, hope still sparked in their eyes. Boarding was organized chaos, shouts, shoving, children crying while clinging to their mothers. Soldiers screamed for everyone to hurry. Families packed into freight cars, cattle cars. No toilets, not enough water, no room to sit. The Nazis locked the doors from the outside. The metal groaned like a verdict. Inside, 70, 80, sometimes 100 people crammed together. The elders tried to calm the young ones, saying they would arrive soon, to hang in there. The journey was an endless nightmare. Whole days in motion, the constant sway of the train mixed with the smell of sweat, urine, and despair. People took turns standing so the sick and children could lie down. Many couldn't hold on. They died suffocated, dehydrated, or from pure exhaustion. Bodies lay among the living, for there was nothing else to be done. Some prayed softly, others cried in silence. Thirst was unbearable torture. One bottle of water had to serve 10 people each day. When the train stopped, panic seized everyone. Was this the final destination? More people to board? Sometimes the guards opened doors only to remove the dead and toss a little water inside. They ordered everyone to drink quickly. That precious liquid was fiercely contested. Mothers moistened their children's lips before thinking of themselves. Whispers circulated about what happened in the camps. Terrible rumors, but many refused to believe, claiming they were just stories to scare, that Germany was a civilized country. Finally, after days that felt eternal, the train slowed. Everyone's heart raced. It was Auschwitz, Birkenau. But they didn't know. They saw only a station, barracks in the distance, smokestacks releasing gray smoke into the sky. Someone sighed a relief. They had arrived. The doors were thrown open violently. Daylight blinded them momentarily. And then the German screams began. Raus! Raus! Schnell! SS officers immaculate in their uniforms watched. The newcomers had no idea they were being judged. Right or left. Life or death.
The platform was a controlled chaos. Families tried desperately to stay together as guards separated them with shouts and batons. They ordered men to one side, women and children to the other. The gravel underfoot hurt their already injured feet from the journey. The air smelled strange, sweet, and bitter at the same time. No one knew it was the odor of bodies burning in the crematoria. SS doctors like Joseph Mengele surveyed the crowd with cold eyes. A flick of a finger decided who went right or left. The guards lied, telling them to leave their luggage and that they would get it later. Everything was arranged to seem normal, to prevent panic. The elderly, young children, and mothers with babies were sent one way, for supposedly baths and disinfection. In truth, they were going straight to the gas chambers. The strongest, aged 16 to 45, went the other way, to forced labor. Husbands and wives said goodbye not knowing it was forever. They were told they'd see each other after the bath, believing the lies. One last kiss, one last glance. Those going to the chambers walked a tree-lined path. SS guards spoke in calm voices, telling them to remember where they left their clothes to find them later. In large rooms, they were forced to undress. They were instructed to hang their clothes on hooks and remember their number. They were told they'd receive soup after the bath. Children cried in fear. Mothers tried to calm them. The elderly were ashamed of their nakedness. They were pushed into rooms with fake showers on the ceiling. Heavy metal doors slammed shut with a bang. Then came the tear. Zyklon B crystals fell through openings in the ceiling. The gas spread. People coughed, screamed, desperately pushed toward the locked doors. They tried to climb over each other to reach the last bit of air near the ceiling. In 20 minutes, everyone was dead. Silence. The Sonderkommando, Jewish prisoners forced to work in the crematoria, entered to remove the bodies. They pried out gold teeth, cut women's hair. Bodies were sent to the ovens or mass graves. Nazi efficiency in action. Those who escaped immediate death discovered a different hell. They were taken to processing rooms where any remaining humanity was stripped away. Head shaved, filthy striped clothes, either too big or too small. A number tattooed on the left arm. They were no longer people, just numbers. The first night in the barracks was a shock. Hundreds of prisoners in wooden bunk beds meant for 10, squeezed together like animals. The stench of disease and death permeated everything. The older prisoners, with empty eyes, welcomed newcomers. They told them to forget who they once were. There was only survival now.
Life in the camp followed a brutal routine. Wake up was at 4:30 a.m. to the sound of deafening whistles. 5 minutes to use the filthy latrines, holes in the ground overflowing with human waste. Breakfast, a bitter black liquid they called coffee, and a tiny piece of moldy bread. Then roll call, hours standing still in rain or snow while the guards counted the prisoners. The dead from the night were dragged out to be counted too. If anyone tried to escape, everyone paid for it by going days without food. The work was endless torture, carrying heavy stones from one pile to another with no purpose, digging trenches only to fill them back in again. In subcamps like Monowitz, they worked in IG Farben factories producing synthetic rubber, 12, sometimes 16 hours a day. Those who collapsed from exhaustion were whipped or shot in the back of the head. Arbeit macht frei, said the gate. The only freedom was death. The prisoners saw the crematoria burning day and night, dark smoke staining the sky. Hunger was a constant companion. Lunch, a thin soup with a few chunks of rotting turnip or potato. Dinner, another piece of bread, sometimes with a spoonful of rancid margarine or a microscopic scrap of sausage. People dreamed about food. They talked about family recipes, remember holidays and banquets. Some ate grass or tree bark to trick their stomachs. Many died from starvation, their bodies so thin they looked like skeletons covered with a thin layer of yellowed skin. Diseases spread like wildfire: typhus, dysentery, tuberculosis. There were no medicines, only an infirmary where the sick went to die or be selected for experiments. Dr. Mengele made regular rounds to the barracks looking for twins or people with unusual physical traits. He injected substances into children's eyes to try to change their color, amputated limbs without anesthesia, sewed twins together at the back to create Siamese siblings. His test subjects rarely survived, and he recorded everything meticulously in notebooks. Solidarity was the only light in that hell. People shared the last crumbs of bread. They told stories at night to try to forget the horror. Older prisoners taught the new ones how to survive: never look weak or sick, always appear useful, don't draw the guards' attention. Small acts of resistance happened. Messages were passed along. Some managed to sabotage production. A clandestine network of mutual help formed. But for every act of humanity, there were 1,000 acts of cruelty. Guards made bets on how many prisoners would die during each shift. They unleashed vicious dogs on the weakest just for fun.
The winter of 1944 was especially cruel. The cutting cold pierced through the poorly built barracks. There weren't enough blankets. People slept huddled together to share body heat. Many didn't wake up in the morning. Feet froze inside wooden shoes. Gangrenous toes had to be amputated without anesthesia. Snow fell mercilessly over the camp, turning everything into a white hell. Prisoners stuffed old newspapers into their torn clothes to try to stay warm. Anyone with gloves was considered rich. A spare pair of socks could be traded for several rations of bread. News of the Soviet advance began to circulate in whispers. The Nazis grew more nervous, more violent. The killing machine accelerated. The crematoria worked 24 hours a day, unable to keep up with the number of corpses. Massive pits were dug to burn bodies in the open. The smell was unbearable. Soot fell like black snow over the camp. Some guards began to disappear at night, taking with them valuables stolen from prisoners. Officers burned documents frantically. Something was about to change. In January 1945, the evacuation order came. The Nazis didn't want to leave any living witnesses. Around 60,000 prisoners were forced to march through deep snow. Thin clothing, wooden shoes that wounded their feet, no proper food. These were the infamous death marches.
Anyone who stopped was executed on the spot. The bodies were left on the side of the frozen roads. Families who had survived together until then were separated in the chaos. "Don't stop walking" became the mantra. If they stopped, they died. The sound of gunshots echoed constantly, marking the end of another exhausted prisoner. Those too sick to walk were left behind in Auschwitz. The Nazis planned to execute them, but there wasn't enough time. The Soviets were approaching fast. In a hurry, the SS blew up the crematoria and gas chambers to hide the evidence, but they couldn't destroy everything. In the final days, they killed as many as they could. Some prisoners hid among piles of corpses to survive. Others crawled beneath the barracks. The silence that fell over the camp was terrifying. Years of screams, commands, and suffering replaced by a deadly stillness. On January 27, 1945, the first Soviet soldiers entered Auschwitz. What they found shocked even men hardened by years of brutal war. Around 7,000 skeletal prisoners, more dead than alive. Warehouses full of stolen belongings. 350,000 men's suits. 837,000 pieces of women's clothing. Tons of human hair. Thousands of shoes, toothbrushes, eyeglasses, prosthetics. The evidence of mass murder on an industrial scale. Hardened soldiers cried at the sight of children so thin they looked like the elderly. The survivors asked why it had taken so long. Some kissed the liberators' boots. Others were too numb to react.
Liberation did not mean the end of suffering. Many died in the days that followed, their weakened bodies unable to process normal food. Others succumbed to diseases that were already too advanced. Survivors were torn between joy and guilt. Why did I survive when so many didn't? The nightmares began, nightmares that would last for decades. The camp was free, but their minds remained imprisoned. The tattoos on their arms were permanent scars, daily reminders. Some mothers searched desperately for children they would never find. Husbands called out for wives who were already ashes scattered in the wind. Where to go? The survivors' homes had been confiscated, their communities destroyed. Many found they were the only ones left from entire families. Out of 100 people deported, maybe 10 had survived. From entire towns, only handfuls remained. In Hungary, where the last transports had come from, Jewish communities with over 800 years of history were wiped out in a matter of months. Survivors wandered like ghosts, looking for familiar faces among the refugees. Every reunion was a miracle wrapped in tears. Meanwhile, the world began to understand the scale of the horror. Journalists and photographers documented Auschwitz and other camps. The images shocked even those hardened by years of war. Allied officers vomited upon entering the crematoria. It was hard to believe humans could do that to other humans. Some Nazis tried to escape. Others burned their uniforms and passed as civilians. Many managed to flee to South America and elsewhere using false identities. Justice seemed far away for the victims who longed to see their torturers punished. The final numbers were incomprehensible. More than 1.1 million people killed in Auschwitz-Birkenau alone. About 90% were Jews. The rest were non-Jewish Poles, Roma, homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, political prisoners. Across the Holocaust, approximately 6 million Jews and 5 million others. Entire families wiped out, ancient cultures destroyed, synagogues that would never hold worshippers again, songs that would never be sung, family recipes lost forever. They weren't just numbers, they were interrupted lives, unrealized potential, generations that would never be born. The survivors carried Auschwitz with them for the rest of their lives. Some never spoke of what they endured, not even to close family. Others made bearing witness their life's mission. Never again became the vow. Primo Levi, Elie Wiesel, and others wrote about their experiences, determined to ensure the world would never forget. Many had children and grandchildren, a final victory against Hitler. Every new baby was a miracle, a promise of continuity for a people targeted for annihilation. The trauma was passed down, inherited nightmares, unexplained fears, a constant sense that safety was an illusion. But they also passed down strength, resilience, and a determination that such horror must never be allowed again. The ashes of Auschwitz spread across the world, but from the ashes, memory and life rose again.